I just love our intro music. Hey, everybody. Welcome to CRE Power Hour. My name is Lisa Marie Wand. I'm one of the guest hosts, and Stephanie Gillison is not here today, so we'll miss her. But welcome to our show. And between Stephanie and I, we have over 4 decades of experience in commercial real estate. And our goal with this show is to uncover, secrets, success strategies, stories, opportunities to help people that are in this business, that are investors, business owners, brokers, and all the ancillary services. So join us every second and fourth Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, and we bring you the top guests in the commercial real estate field. So thanks for being here. Tune in for the insights and stay for the success stories. This is CRE Power Hour, and today we have a wonderful guest. Andy, thank you so much for being here. Andy Tourin is a commercial real estate title and escrow pro. I mean, you've been in the business since you look so young, but you started in the late 80s, right?
The early 80s, 1982.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, can tell us how you ended up in this wonderful world of commercial title and escrow.
Oh, I started at a small and in those days you had hand-posted plant books, right? We didn't have any computer records or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that was the job, was posting the plant books and that kind of thing. And then, you progress through that to title assistant, title officer. Eventually the small company I was with was purchased by Stewart Title. They didn't have a local plant here in Northern Nevada, so they purchased our company basically for the plant. And I stayed on and just was doing, at the time I was doing all the long order or the commercial searches. Mm-hmm. And doing the commercial title work for the escrow teams, and then went on to form Stewart Title's commercial division and was there for 21 years.
That's amazing. So you really rolled your sleeves up from getting out of college and started in the more entry level, and then just worked your way up over time, which is wonderful. I think about my dad. His career was like that too. He was with the same company pretty much his entire career. And he started out, working in a warehouse. He worked for Caterpillar, worked his way up the ranks. And it sounds like you're similar in the title field. And now you're the president of First Centennial Title. I mean, that's a huge position.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Working for a locally owned and operated company in Northern Nevada, right? Reno, Tahoe, this area, we're blessed here in that although it's a growing community and our in-migration is pretty massive and we see lots of job growth here and that kind of thing. It still counts that people know you here, right? So listen, I'm humble in the fact that I've never worked in Dallas, Chicago, DC. My whole career has been here in Northern Nevada, but we've been successful here, and we're very proud of the work that we do here.
Yeah, I know we have multiple transactions, commercial transactions happening with your team right now, and you have a great reputation. And there are some things that make you stand out as a title company on the commercial side. Can you talk about those?
Sure. Again, I think starting for me personally, starting from the ground up, right, and just getting to know the area, because right now, frankly, I could buy a title report for $25 from India or something like that. Yeah. But the people, we're one of the last standing companies here locally that have a full team, in-house team of title professionals that they're all local experts. Again, I mentioned it at Stewart. Here locally, some of the larger companies, national title insurers started outsourcing 30 years ago, and that's how I ended up here at First Centennial. And so what we've done is hired those professionals that their jobs have been outsourced, and so we have that last in-house title expert capacity, and so that helps a lot. Again, in Northern Nevada, you can get me on the line, and I know the ditches and the ditch rights and the mineral rights and the background on the patents and that kind of thing. And not again, you can't get that a lot of times from an outsourced title department. So
Yeah.
that's a lot. Same on the escrow side. There are companies now that are going the AI route or going the outsourcing route where they have a hub located somewhere else in the country of the escrow professionals that get the work done, and we do it all in-house here. So I think AI will integrate AI eventually as a tool. All title companies will, but we don't rely on it certainly to do the work for our clients.
Yeah, and I appreciate that about your company. And this, you're here, you and I are in the Nevada market, so I cover the whole state of Nevada. I also cover California. And there are a lot of states that are like this. Nevada is, 80% rural. People don't realize that. We've got Reno in the north and Vegas in the south. People always think those two cities are close to each other, and they're not. And everything else in our state is really considered rural. So one of the things that happens in pretty much any state that has area outside of a metropolitan location is when you go to do research for title, sometimes you're actually physically going to a location and digging through records. And that happens a lot in our state because we have so many rural towns that still have paper records.
So true. Yes. In some of the rural counties, the cow counties, you have to go to the recorder's office and do a grantor grantee search. So that still happens. Fortunately, all the counties that were licensed here in the northwestern part of the state, and then of course down in Vegas, the southern part of the state, it's all online. So we can do those same kind of searches through the recorder's websites online if we have to.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk about some of the things that commercial brokers, buyers and sellers too, investors, business owners should be looking at when they receive a title report.
Well, so I always, we teach classes on this, and we have so many horror stories of people that don't read the title report, right? So that's my overwhelming message is, we take so much pride in crafting these reports. Each one of them is handcrafted. Please read them and call us if you have questions. But I think the first thing you look at, of course, is the vesting. Make sure you're dealing with the correct people. If you're dealing with Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but it's owned by the Smith Corporation or the Smith Trust or whatever it happens to be, just make sure that you're dealing with the correct folks. If it is an entity, whether it's a trust, an LLC, a general partnership, a corporation, you want to ask right away, do they have those entity documents? Because the title company is going to need those for signing authority. Do they have a bank account in the name of the LLC? You won't believe how many times we have transactions that are and properties are owned by the LLC, but they don't have a bank account, and we have to disperse to the selling entity, right? So we have to disperse to a bank account in the name of that LLC. So that causes problems at the end of a transaction if those questions aren't asked beforehand.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you there because this happened. I see this so many times where a buyer, especially, will start out, let's say, John and Jane Smith, And then in the middle of the transaction, they change their mind. They either create a new LLC or they want to put it in another LLC that they already have formed. And that's fine. We can all work with that, right? But then the documents need to be changed. All of the paperwork needs to be provided. And sometimes that's a rush.
Right.
And then you touched on a really great point, which is if you purchase a property under a certain vesting, certain entity, then you need to be able to disperse funds to that same entity when escrow closes. And I feel like a lot of times we'll ask the questions up front, and then that changes a lot. I see that probably half the time.
Sure.
Transactions.
Yeah, no, we see it whether it's on residential or commercial. We see that regularly, and whether it's the buyer or the seller, we need to certify signing authority for the entity. So we're always asking for that kind of thing. And listen, there are folks that have a trust that's 9 binders full, thick, and they have assets all over the world, and we don't need to see those assets for the most part, right? All we need to verify is signing authority. Who is the trustee for this trust? Who can sign for the trust, right?
Yes.
Most of the time, unless somebody's passed away, most of the time that can be verified with a 1-page trust certificate or certificate of trust. We don't need to see the whole trust for the most part, unless, again, somebody's died and we want to see what the trust says. Happens when one of the trustees or one of the grantors, the settlers, is incapacitated or has passed away. So that's when we'll ask for those sections of the trust. But again, we don't care about your Lamborghini collection. We don't care about your property in Switzerland. That's the stuff that we want to see. And so, yeah, we get kickback on that a little bit. And I just remind people, listen, we're not digging into your business. We just need to verify signing authority.
Yeah, you don't need someone to back up with the truck and bring in all the boxes. And I think that when people are selling and purchasing a property, they're not always thinking about what's going to be happening later, because making sure that everything is verified now will make life so much easier down the road when you go to sell a property or transfer a property.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. And that's what we run into when we get kickback from a buyer sometimes, and we say, listen, we could probably see our way. We can get through underwriting and get you into this property. But next year, when you go to refi or you go to sell 5 years down the road or whatever, you're going to run into this again. So let's work on it now.
Yeah. I was involved in a transaction recently where another title company had the title and escrow, and they said, we cannot insure this property. And we ended up bringing it to you and to your team, and we were able to work everything out. So what would be some reasons why something like that would happen, where a title company would say, we're not able to insure title on this?
There are various reasons. So again, as I mentioned, like a publicly traded company, just to take a Tycor, for example, I'm just using an example, the Fidelity family of companies, or First American, not to call anybody out. But when you're publicly traded, you have to make sure that the stockholders are taken care of. So they have generally a tighter underwriting box, right?
Sure.
And sometimes that box is the same in Florida as it is in Nebraska, as it is in Nevada. We're able, because we have 4 underwriters, we're underwritten by publicly traded companies, and we're also underwritten by a Lloyd's of London subsidiary, Real Advantage Title company. They're not publicly traded, and they're old title guys like me, so they take each of those on a case-by-case basis. So whether it involves bankruptcy issues, if it involves probate issues, a lot of times that kind of stuff an underwriter at a publicly traded company may not have the leeway in the guidelines. Construction broken priority is a big red flag.
Yeah.
Tribal lands, big red flag, so on and so forth. We can work our way through it. It just is a matter of desire to work your way through it, and the ability to look at things outside of a smaller window.
I really like that about your organization is there's a lot of enthusiasm and motivation there, because even on the broker side, it takes those same types of qualities to successfully complete transactions sometimes too, when they're not straightforward, they're not easy, and also the ability to be flexible and come up with creative solutions. I really appreciate that about your team as well. And so thank you for that. And then let's talk about due diligence in a commercial transaction. From your perspective, what are some of the most important pieces of that process as far as the title and escrow and the transaction side go?
Well, to start with, let's say to start at the very first day, right? The contract, we receive a contract, EMD. Some people don't realize that a personal check isn't good funds right away. And so a lot of title companies, us included, will use a ZACM or a ACH-based platform where you can just use your phone almost like you would online banking on your cell phone. Yeah. You can transfer funds that way, certified check, wire, that kind of thing. So we'd start there with good funds, and then the timeline. So a good commercial title company, their escrow team is going to go through the contract with you and verify the timeline with both sides, make sure we're all on page. Okay, due diligence, starts this day, ends this day. This, you're due for this. Also, referrals. A good commercial title and escrow company is going to have referrals to the parties for environmental engineers, surveyors, real estate attorneys, that kind of thing that can help out in that due diligence process. When you receive the title report, again, we want you to read it. Easements, of course, are the big thing we want you to look at. I can't even begin to tell you the amount of times that we've gotten up to the day of close, or we actually close, and then I get questions from the buyer about this easement that they didn't read. We provide copies of all our title reports are hyperlinked.
Hyperlinked, yeah, I like that.
So you get copies of every document. If you have questions on an easement, we want you to call us and ask about it. I'm not a surveyor. There are easements that I can help you understand. They're easier, and then there are easements that may require a surveyor to draw out for you. But know where the easements are. If you're going to develop a piece of property, if you're buying land that you're going to improve, you have to know where not only the subjective easements, where the easements that burden your property are, but also the appurtenant easements. How do you get to the property?
Yes.
I'm in a transaction right now, we closed, and the buyer wasn't clear on how they access their rural property. And now they're in a battle with the county over a building permit and that kind of thing. So knowing where your beneficial easements are and where your subjective easements are, you want to know that. Restrictions on the property, if you're going to put something on it, you want to know that the restrictions on the property allow you the use that you intend for it. So those are the things you want to look at. Special assessments, obviously taxes will be paid, but there are transactions where you'll inherit, for lack of a better term, a special assessment. So you want to understand that, or you want to know whether it's been paid off and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's always fun. We have a transaction with your team right now where we had the Alta title policy, and then also it's a development project. We had an Alta survey done for the very specific reasons that you're talking about that. And then in the middle of all of that, the city decided to change some of the ingress and egress to
Wow.
the property. And then zoning can also be an issue because those things can change as well. And although the city and county entities, have their codes and have all of their guidelines, what I find, and I'm sure this happens across the US, is that those things can change. The city council or the regional transportation district or any of those can change their minds about things, Department of Transportation, all that stuff. And so it can become a challenge, especially for those development projects or the rural projects. Like you said, we just have a brand new listing, a mobile home park that's in a town that's about 45 minutes to an hour away from Reno, and looking at things like how do you access the property. There's usually easements because sometimes these blocks of land have little twists and turns and ditches and all kinds of utility easements, all kinds
Sure.
of stuff. So it's good stuff. It's good that I agree with you. Listen, everybody, read the title report. I can't tell you how many people don't read the title report. And I'm talking about agents, brokers, and parties to the transaction. And we ask, I ask as a broker for our clients to sign off on the title report that they're accepting it, which means that they've read it.
Yeah, we asked that as well, that you've read and
Yes.
approved it. And again, restrictions, you don't have to be an expert on the restrictions. In some industrial or office parks, the restrictions can be fairly large, right? But you have to know that what your specific use, intended use, is going to be allowed, right? So look for those specific things, and I get calls on that kind of thing as well. And so yeah, we ask that every commitment is signed for by the buyer, is read and approved.
Yeah. And then another thing that came up on that development project I'm talking to you about, we had that in and out of contract a couple of times. So this wasn't our first go round. We're on go round number 3 on this transaction.
Sure.
And this time, your organization found some really old CCNRs, like really old.
Mm-hmm.
And those didn't come up previously. So it's really important for people to be able to dig and find those CCNRs, even though they're most likely very outdated. They're still a document that's pertinent to the property.
Yeah, they're a record matter, right? We have to show all record matters now. And that brings up an interesting point, Lisa Marie, you may or may not be aware, but around the country, there certainly was a time period where there were race-based restrictions on property, and Nevada is no different. So Nevada, each of the counties in Nevada has gone through the process of if those kind of covenants are identified, they'll redact those from the official record. If those race-based restrictions are the only restrictions on a property, we won't even reflect that document, obviously, because it's federally illegal and it's unenforceable. But often they're contained in other restrictions, right? And so you have to reflect the document. But I get questions on the race-based restrictions, and that's how our state has gone about it, is we redact those from the official record.
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up, because I have seen those. And, the other thing that I'm going to reiterate, besides read the title report and click all the hyperlinks if you have those, to me, it's a really fascinating process, because I don't like doing the research. That's why we have you, but I do like to take a look at all of the interesting things that we find about a property, about its history, about how it's being affected by growth and development in an area. The other thing is, call your title officers and escrow officers when you have questions. Don't wait till the last, we're on the home stretch, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. So they are there regardless of the organization to partner with you for success and to answer your questions or your clients' questions. And I know your firm. When I talked to one of your commercial title officers the other day, Lynn, she said, anytime you have a question, just call. So hopefully you're working with the organization that you have that type of relationship with, because it can help you avoid issues that can come back later and potentially be a problem.
So true. And your escrow officer is going to be your point person, right? She'll be able to answer, or he'll be able to answer 99% of the questions on the transaction. But when you have deeper problems, often that escrow officer will have to get a title person involved with that, and get an underwriter involved with the answering those questions, or getting a problem resolved. So again, having that local is a great asset for us, because people know they can call me, for example, and get an answer right away. Again, in larger markets, you'd have to go through your escrow person, and then they'd have to email the title person in another state or even another country, and try to dig through that, and so on and so forth. So sometimes the timelines can be elongated that way, but so we try to make that as quick and painless as possible.
That's one of the many things I appreciate about you. Also, that you're so involved in the commercial real estate community. I see you at CCIM events. We're involved with CRE for quite some time, and NAIOP, and it's so nice to be able to go to a networking event or a class or something and see you there, because you're not only are you incredibly smart and experienced, but you're a fun guy to hang out with, Andy.
Well, we try. My biggest challenge is convincing my wife, but
well, that's another story.
Yeah. No, I think CRE. So we have 3 organizations here locally. We don't have an SIOR local. Our closest chapter is Northern California. There are many local members, as you know, the SIOR Northern California chapter here in Northern Nevada. But our local chapters are CRE, CCIM, and NAIOP. And I'm very proud of my affiliation with each of those. I was on the board of CRE for 11 years, past president. That was quite an honor. The board and the executive team of CCIM for a decade. And this is my 13th year on the board of NAIOP. So that's, I think, working with those organizations, that's how you get to meet great brokers like yourself, great surveyors, environmental engineers. I was on the phone with one of our local environmental engineers that I met through NAIOP. He was helping me through a really convoluted environmental report just yesterday. And so that's the best way, in my opinion, to get to know your local commercial real estate professionals, or through those kind of affiliations.
I agree with you, because when people ask me about commercial real estate, so I'm in my 19th year now. I started when I was 5, Andy, just in case you're
That's right. Yeah.
And this is a relationship-based business for me. I know it is for you as well. And that's how we are able to help people have repeat business, referrals, and be successful over time. As we're consistent, we continue to learn. I'm almost done with my CCIM, hallelujah, and working on another national certification. So having those relationships and the continuity of those relationships is so important. And I mean, I've known you, I got into the business in 2003. So I've known you for the majority of that time. And I just appreciate how we can work together to help our clients to create win-win transactions in the commercial real estate world. And so do you have a good story you could share with us before we wrap today? Something interesting, a success story, or like a horror story that maybe our audience can learn from?
We do. Yeah. Again, we do. We keep a collection of horror stories. We roll it out as a CE class around Halloween, and it's fairly well received. Yeah. But most of my horror stories revolve around people that aren't aware of their easements, and they buy a property and they're going to build a 3-story office building, and then they have to spend $80,000 to reroute a transmission line or something like that. There was a really good horror story, a contract. So there's a commercial contract. They were due to close on a Monday. The money was in, the lender's money was in, everything was done. The buyer asked the seller's permission to get his cleaning crew in the building to clean up so they could get started rolling on Monday when the deal closed. Well, some cleaning products got too close to the furnace or something like that, and the facility suffered a huge amount of fire damage. And so, whose insurance covers that, right? Is it the seller's insurance? Is it the buyer's insurance? That kind of thing. So that one went to court, and the judge ruled it was the buyer's insurance that was responsible for that. But that's usually, I mean, I'm not a broker. I'm not an attorney. I don't give any parties advice outside of the title and escrow field, right? But to let somebody occupy your building before they own it, that's you got to know that's dangerous, right? So
I totally agree with you, and that is a horror story. And so many times when people are getting ready to purchase a building, so if I'm representing a buyer or a buyer and a seller in a transaction, they say, can we just, put a few things in, or can we just start our tenant improvements? And I say, no, because they're so excited, for this big purchase and to get their business or their investment moving. And they don't think about how something simple, next thing you know, the building could burn down or someone could get hurt. So I'm always, from my perspective, very adamant about that, because it may seem like a little thing or you're being nice and doing a favor. And that's when those worst case scenarios come into play. So, well, thank you so much for being here today, Andy. You are so amazing. I appreciate your professionalism, your experience, and your sense of humor, which we didn't see a lot of that today, because title and escrow can be kind of a serious subject. But
boring.
Yeah, I don't think it's boring, but you did a great job, and thanks for being here. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Lisa Marie.
Take care.
Bye.